What is the craziest conspiracy you've ever believed? Shape-shifting lizard people, a look-alike replacing your favorite singer, the weather being controlled by a shadow government, Polybius? These and countless other questions are brought to you by Cognito Inc. But in a world where you can't trust anyone, who exactly should we be looking up to? Today we'll be ranking the characters of Netflix's animated show Inside Job from good to evil. For this video, we'll be taking the characters from the show and breaking them into three categories: the good, the gray, and the bad to evil. We'll be trying to focus on the most important characters to this show, but we will be excluding the show's many questionable depictions of celebrities such as Oprah and Buzz Aldrin. Of course, this is one of those situations where good is relative, because anyone associated with Cognito Inc. has at least one or two things to pay for. Finally, and this should go without saying, but there are going to be some massive spoilers on this list. So buckle up and let's get to it. First we have the good. These characters may have a hand in controlling our world through questionable means, but hey, at least they try to be fair about it. Taking the gold medal of good is Brett Hand. Though the pilot episode of the show paints him in the role of adversary, we had to give Brett the top spot. The more we see of him, the more plain it becomes that he has a good heart. What Brett wants more than anything is approval. He does his best to lift up his colleagues and never minds being a supportive player. Though he often steals credit and attention from his co-leader, this is never something he would intentionally do. He's always happy to praise Reagan and admits readily that she's the one who should be running things. Even when he does scheme, it's usually a scheme to bring people closer together.
Help! Oh god, Reagan, help, the robot's gone rogue!
One of Brett's biggest faults is, well, just working for Cognito Inc. in the first place. We can even absolve him of this though, because we see time and time again how easily he can be led astray. One of his first questions upon arrival is actually whether or not the company is evil, to which he's quickly talked down from worrying about it. The fact that he's so quick to ask this question shows his willingness to call out bad things when he sees them. He just isn't smart enough to always see them. Taking the silver medal of good is Reagan Ridley. Honestly, a case could have been made to put Reagan just about anywhere on this list. Unlike Brett, she knows that Cognito is not a good organization and has helped make it more powerful anyway. She's even admitted more than once that her evil plan is world domination, which is very seldom the motive of an altruistic character. We're placing her here anyway for a couple reasons. The first of which is just that, well, everyone in this show is complicit with Cognito, so it's hard to hold that against any one character. The second is that she has a good heart. Despite all of her goals being to further her own causes, she's the only one who consistently puts in hard work for the entire team. Even still, she doesn't abuse her power on the occasions that she gets a taste of it. A perfect example of this is during the Mole Hunt episode, where she decides that she's willing to take the fall in order to save her father from her work colleagues. She also does some morally questionable things during that episode, which shows her struggle between seeing easy solutions and not wanting to take agency away from the people close to her. She doesn't always make the right choices, but we see her get better over the course of the show. Finally, she just has a lot of positive traits. Her work ethic is incredible, and she always puts others' needs ahead of her own. She's more forgiving than she claims to be, and it's always satisfying to see her working through the issues caused by her traumatic upbringing. Taking the bronze medal of good is Orin. He didn't play a large role in the show. In fact, we only ever see him in flashbacks, but he played an important role in Reagan's life. In a strange way, he symbolizes her humanity. Since we've chosen to argue for Reagan being a good person, we felt we almost had to mention Orin here. He was Reagan's friend in elementary school, her first and only friend. When the principal explains that Reagan has the option to skip grades, she asks if she can stay behind because she's finally found someone to talk to. We learn she didn't want to abandon all the social skills we now know she struggles with as an adult. Ultimately, she isn't allowed to, and this was the turning point in her life where she started to become more cold and detached. In leaving Orin behind, Reagan left behind something good in her life that we wanted to examine in this entry. Finally, rounding out this tier, we have Masters. Rafe Masters. This is an interesting one because Rafe is sort of a jerk. He's full of himself, clingy, he has stalking tendencies, and he doesn't listen to his partners. Most of the episode where he's featured is him causing trouble for Reagan, who only wants to break up with him. So, yeah, we'll be the first to admit that this James Bond parody character is a total douchebag. He still makes the good tier because, despite being a mess in his personal life, he actively campaigns against evil. The guy has a nemesis and is trying to stop corrupt overlords from doing questionable things. In a show where everyone else is maintaining world domination, he's trying to stop things from getting worse.
Was the last spy gadget Reagan ever made me.
A case honestly could have been made for him ranking even higher. Now we move into the gray. These are the characters who are more acclimated to the moral relativism of the shadow government. Kicking things off here is Gigi. We never thought we'd be saying kind things about the inventor of the selfie, but Gigi is one of the less nefarious team members of Cognito. She functions as a sort of PR person for the company and is actually able to pull the gang out of a lot of scrapes. She's the most likely to volunteer solutions to the problems of her coworkers, but she also has a selfish side. She thinks that rules don't apply to her because she's pretty, and is very confident taking things and people that are not hers to take. Following her is Magic Mike. Magic Mike is a sentient mushroom from the Hollow Earth. He can often be abrasive when he doesn't agree with something, and he is very prone to his vices. He can also be very sexual, which is not always appropriate at the workplace. What saves Magic Mike from being lower on the list is that he has the ability to read thoughts. We're not going to say that he never abuses this power, because he does sometimes, but he's a lot more responsible with it than we think others might be in his situation. Speaking of which, our next slot goes to Dr. Andre. He's also a very sex-positive character who crosses the line into inappropriate, given the setting. We do actually think he's a little better in that regard than Mike, and we're not even going to be too harsh on him about his addiction to all the drugs, including some that are only available through Cognito. What brings him lower on the list for us is the fact that, despite his name, we discovered that he isn't really a doctor. He admits to faking his credentials, and this is essentially horrendous considering he's been practicing medicine for the company. After Andre is one of his potential victims, Glenn Dolphman. Glenn volunteered his DNA for a program that would turn him into a dolphin. Unfortunately, the procedure was performed by Dr. Andre. We don't know if that's why it turned out so poorly, but it's clear that not everything went according to plan with that operation. We're not holding Glenn's dolphinism against him, however, just his personality. There's an episode where we see him switch places with Brett. During that time, we get to see all the prejudice that he lives with, seeing how he does. At first, the episode evokes a lot of empathy for his situation and helps explain his aggressive demeanor. As things progress, though, we see that Brett, with his good heart, is able to get a lot further in Glenn's body than Glenn ever did, arguably too far. Glenn often gets the chance to save the day, but more often than not, we know him as violent, rude, prejudiced, and hypocritical. He also has a frightening reliance on weaponry, which he has hidden all around the office. After him is Tomiko Ridley. There's actually a pretty positive message buried somewhere in Tomiko's self-involvement. She decides to love herself and get validation from within rather than seeking it from external sources. Pretty wholesome, right? Well, no. While that particular message is good, the plot arc where she goes to obtain that validation is very telling about her character. She decides to have a wedding to herself in a thinly veiled attempt to get under the skin of her ex-husband. She also puts her daughter in the middle of it and makes her work the wedding. She chastises Reagan for never putting herself first while also making her run the operation. There's also her treatment of Reagan in general. While Reagan's father may have been the one doing more obvious damage, there isn't a single flashback that suggests Tomiko was anything but neglectful of her daughter. This is all but entirely confirmed in her treatment of her daughter as an adult. Rounding out this tier is Barrow. We know, okay? One of the big twists is that Barrow is trying to bring down Cognito in a bloody and violent fashion involving Krav Maga sharks. There is a lot of violence along the way and more than a few additional threats. Barrow was even made from bad intentions, being brought into the world only so that Reagan had someone to hug her as a child when her parents didn't want to. It's tragic. All the same, we can't entirely fault Barrow for his actions. We don't think it's his fault that he hugs aggressively, nor that he cares too much about his prime directive to make Reagan happy. That's literally what he was programmed to do. Even if he's really bad at it and takes the attempts to an extreme degree, his actions are terrible, but his good intentions keep him from being in the bottom tier, even if just barely. Finally, we have the bad to evil. No one is completely blameless, but these are the worst of the worst. The characters with little or no chance at redemption. First is J.R. Skympole. Did I say that right? If you took all the toxic traits of Cognito and wrapped them up into a single person, you would have J.R. He's arrogant, he expects everything to be done for him, and it's obvious he cares more about his own promotion than the company he's supposed to be running. He's also incredibly sexist.
Brett's second day of work.
Though all members of the team could be accused of overlooking the contributions of their female staff, one could definitely argue that they're just following the example of their boss, JR. He constantly expects too much from everyone, especially Reagan. He never trusts her to handle things when it counts and is happy to pass off the credit for her successful work, only noticing her when something has gone wrong. That's just one very specific bad trait, but he has a lot of them. He's a yes man to his higher-ups and would do whatever it takes to get promoted. He's quick to abuse his power, sacrifice those working for him, and even kill a team member or two just to amuse himself. We're not kidding, he has a button that does that. Taking the bronze medal of evil is Robotus. It's pretty bad when the sentient AI trying to kill all of humanity can only take the bronze place for evil, huh? But he likes Friends. We're kidding, we're not taking into consideration his love for our favorite 90s sitcom, though it's no joke that he is obsessed. Robotus was a robot intended to replace the US president to make controlling the government that much easier. When he's first built, it's obvious that he does care a lot about the country. Even when he starts becoming self-aware, he wants to be a good ruler. He wasn't, but he tried. His solution to the nation's problems, Americube, was silly and would never have worked, but it was also a lot harder than what he was supposed to do. Nothing whatsoever. When he learns just how violent and self-destructive humanity is, he decides to destroy them before they can do anything else horrendous. Unlike Barrow, we do have to hold Robotus accountable for his own actions because he is, at this point, entirely self-aware. He gets some credit for also helping the gang get out of numerous sticky situations. You could argue that they have to bribe him into it, which is true, but it still means that he's contributing something, a case that is much harder to argue for our upcoming entries. On that note, the Silver Medal of Evil goes to the Shadow Board. Their evilness is implied. There are very few actions we can actually attribute to the Shadow Board directly because of their hands-off approach to ruling, but also, they do rule the entire Shadow government, and we know that plenty of shady things are happening there. Despite apparently being all-powerful, they fall into a lot of the same pitfalls as their human underlings down on the ground. They're very pleased by all of the terrible things being done at Cognito for their benefit, including the initial creation of Robotus. They were actually the ones to order the replacement of the real president in the first place. One thing we know that they are directly responsible for is the testing of many world leaders to become one of them. We're not saying it's wrong for candidates to be tested in some way, but it was awfully cruel to make them think that they had the position before surprising them with the deadly interview. This is one example of their intentional cruelty, but mostly we feel their role in this terrible world order seems like enough to earn them the slot. So, who do we think was worse? The Gold Medal of Evil goes to Rand Ridley. Rand is terrible through and through. A large portion of this first season is about the dynamic between Reagan and her father, who actually seems to be learning to be kinder toward her. Though his actions are often appalling, there's usually some sort of lesson and reluctant admission of wrongdoing. He hugs his daughter for the first time early in the show. He finally says that he pretended not to be proud of her so she would try harder to be great because he cares about her success. These things don't undo the fact that he was a terrible parent to her growing up, and continues to be one even as he's living off of her. He's somehow both totally detached and horrendously clingy, vying for her attention against her work life. He pushed Reagan into working for Cognito her entire life, and is now constantly undermining her progress by sabotaging her projects there at every turn.
Sorry I'm late. The father should never miss his daughter's first sentencing.
When she doesn't give him enough attention, he acts out, which is actually the very scene that the show opens on. She's not the only one he's willing to manipulate either. A large part of his scheming involves lording his majority shareholder position over JR. He also starts the Flat Earther movement in his free time, ruining the scientific integrity of many strangers just to prove something to his former colleague and current rival. Cycling back around to his daughter, however, he won the gold for the two big reveals in the season 1 finale. The first was that he performed a neurological procedure on his daughter to alter her memory and get her to focus on being excellent in science. Believe it or not, this was not the only time he admitted to altering her. The second was how he takes control of Cognito, stealing the promotion that Reagan worked so hard for, despite the fact that he created the very situation that disqualified her from taking JR's position. To do all of that was terrible anyway, but to do it to his own daughter, that's some mad genius level insensitivity with an emphasis on the mad. It's making me mad. And that's been our ranking of inside job characters from good to evil. Was there anyone we left off who you missed? Let us know in the comments who you thought the most good was and the most evil. Be sure to let us know if there are any other video topics you'd like to see us cover too. And while you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe. But as always, stay wicked.